September 7, 2015. A Tuesday. Henry McCabe's phone connects to his wife's voicemail at 2:28 in the morning. What it records is not a conversation. The voicemail runs for several minutes. There are sounds on it, sounds his wife cannot explain, sounds that, to this day, nobody can explain. His body would surface 2 months later, and nothing about the autopsy would match what was heard on that recording. Henry McCabe was a state auditor in Minnesota. He had a wife, 2 children, a stable career. Nothing in his life suggested he would vanish under circumstances this strange, but strange isn't the right word. What happened to Henry McCabe defies the clean categories we use to explain death. Accident, suicide, homicide. This was none of those. Or maybe all of them. The voicemail is the center of everything. What's on it? What it seems to capture. And why none of it matches the physical evidence. Tonight, we're going to listen. Not to the voicemail itself, that's not for us to share, but to the details, the timeline, the silence that followed. Henry Thomas McCabe was 32 years old. He'd moved to Minnesota from Liberia as a child. By 2015, he'd built exactly the kind of life that should have kept him safe. He worked for the state, auditing, numbers, spreadsheets, the kind of job where you clock in, do the work, and come home to your family every night. His wife, Corinne, described him as a devoted father, quiet, reliable, the kind of man who didn't stay out late, didn't make scenes, didn't disappear. On the night of September 6, 2015, Henry went out with a friend. They drove to a club in Brooklyn Park. It was supposed to be a normal night. Brooklyn Park is a suburb of Minneapolis, population around 80,000. Strip malls, fast food, the kind of place where bad things aren't supposed to happen. Surveillance footage shows Henry at the club that night, dancing, talking, looking like any other person on a Tuesday night out. Nothing unusual. Around 1:30 a.m. on September 7th, Henry left the club. According to reports, he was seen getting into a vehicle, but it wasn't his vehicle. His friend, William Kennedy, reportedly drove him from the club. What happened between the club and home? That's where the timeline fractures. At 2:28 a.m., Henry's phone connected to his wife's voicemail. The call lasted approximately 3 minutes. What she heard when she listened to it changed everything. The voicemail contained sounds. Guttural, animal-like. Witnesses who've heard it describe the noises as inhuman. Not speech, not screaming, something else entirely. And then, cutting through the noise, a voice. Possibly Henry's. Whispering 3 words that his wife would never forget. "I've been shot." After the whisper, more sounds. And then, near the end of the recording, a different voice. Deeper, calmer. It said 2 words, "Stop it." Corinne discovered the voicemail the next morning, September 8th. She listened once. She called the police. Henry McCabe was reported missing. The search began immediately. Police canvassed the area between the club and Henry's home. They found nothing. The police interviewed William Kennedy, the friend who'd driven Henry that night. Kennedy's story changed. First he said he dropped Henry at a gas station. Then he said he couldn't remember. Kennedy claimed he last saw Henry walking toward the gas station around 2 a.m. But the voicemail came in at 2:28. Where was Henry during those 28 minutes? Days passed, then weeks. Henry's face appeared on missing persons posters. His family held vigils. But the trail had gone cold before it ever really started. The voicemail became public knowledge. Edited portions were released. People who heard it described the sounds as wolf-like. Others said they sounded like someone choking or gurgling. Some analysts suggested the sounds could be explained by mechanical interference, a phone rubbing against fabric, audio distortion. The family rejected these explanations. They knew Henry's voice. They knew what a pocket dial sounded like. This was different. This sounded like someone or something struggling. On November 2nd, 2015, nearly 2 months after Henry vanished, a kayaker made a discovery in Rush Lake, Minnesota. A body floating near the shoreline. It was Henry McCabe. His body had been in the water for some time. Decomposition had set in. But he was identifiable. He'd been found. Rush Lake is about 60 miles northwest of Minneapolis. It's a quiet body of water. Not a place you'd expect to find a missing state auditor from the suburbs. The autopsy was conducted within days. Investigators were expecting answers. They were expecting to find evidence that matched the voicemail. They found neither. No gunshot wounds. Despite Henry's whispered claim, "I've been shot," there was no bullet, no entry wound, no exit wound, no trace of a firearm injury at all, no evidence of blunt force trauma, no defensive wounds, no signs of a struggle. Henry's body showed no physical indication that violence had occurred. The medical examiner concluded that Henry McCabe most likely died from drowning. Water in the lungs, consistent with submersion. But how did he get into Rush Lake? That's the question that haunts this case. How does a man leave a voicemail claiming he's been shot and then drown in a lake 60 miles away without a mark on him? The official cause of death was ruled as undetermined. Not accident, not suicide, not homicide. The case remains officially open to this day. The voicemail remains the strangest piece of evidence. It captures something, but no one can agree on what that something is. Some theories point to William Kennedy. His inconsistent statements raised suspicion, but investigators never charged him with anything. There wasn't enough evidence. Other theories suggest Henry encountered someone else that night, a stranger, someone who drove him to Rush Lake. But there's no evidence for that either. And then there are the theories about the voicemail itself, the sounds that people can't explain. Some say they're natural, others say they're anything but. Wildlife experts were consulted. Some suggested the sounds could match a moose in distress. Others said they could be canine. But none of the explanations fully fit. The stop it at the end of the voicemail presents its own mystery. Whose voice is that? Why are they calm? What exactly are they trying to stop? If someone hurt Henry, why leave a voicemail running? Why allow 3 minutes of evidence to be recorded? It doesn't fit the pattern of a cover-up. If no one heard him, what made those sounds? What prompted him to whisper that he'd been shot? And how did he end up in a lake without a single injury? Henry's family has pushed for answers for nearly a decade. They've hired private investigators. They've kept his memory alive in the media. But the case has not moved. Law enforcement maintains the case is still open, still being investigated. But years have passed without an update, without an arrest, without closure. The voicemail has been analyzed, enhanced, studied by experts. Each new analysis reveals something, or nothing. The interpretation depends on who's listening. What's publicly available is only a portion of the full recording. The family has kept other sections private. Some things are too painful to share. Those who've heard the complete voicemail say it's difficult to listen to. The sounds linger. The whispers stay with you. If you've heard the publicly released portions of this voicemail online, you already know. There's something about it that doesn't sit right. Something that resists explanation. Some cases are like that. They resist the categories we create for them. They refuse to fit into boxes labeled solved, or even solvable. Henry McCabe was a real person. A husband. A father. Whatever happened to him, whether mundane or inexplicable, deserves to be remembered with care. The case remains officially open with no cause of death ever determined. Law enforcement has not classified the death as suspicious, despite the voicemail evidence. That classification, or lack thereof, has frustrated the family. They believe something happened to Henry. The voicemail proves it. But the autopsy tells a different story, and that's the heart of this mystery. Two pieces of evidence that should align, but don't. A voicemail that says one thing, a body that says another. If you want to explore this case further, the publicly released portions of the voicemail are available online. But consider carefully before you listen. Some sounds stay with you. What you'll hear is just audio. Distorted. Fragmentary. but the mind fills in the gaps. It creates narratives where only noise exists. Be aware of that tendency. This case reminds us that pocket dials can capture moments we never intended to share, and sometimes moments that no one can explain. If you're the kind of listener who finds these stories worth exploring, consider subscribing. We tell stories like this one every week. Stories that don't resolve neatly. Stories that stay with you. Henry McCabe's family is still searching for answers. Nearly a decade later, they haven't given up. They believe the truth is somewhere in that voicemail. Maybe they're right. Maybe the answer is there. In those 3 minutes of guttural sounds and whispered words. We just haven't learned how to hear it yet. Rush Lake has been quiet since that November morning in 2015. The water keeps its secrets. The voicemail keeps playing in the minds of those who've heard it. Henry McCabe left a message. We just don't know what it means. And maybe we never will. Thanks for listening tonight. I'm your host, and this has been Night Shift Stories. Keep your phone close. And be careful what you leave behind.